Hello. So this is my video journal on week 11. There were two source book readings, one on bones and one on the heart. And I actually wrote my body systems paper on the part of it on the skeletal system. And I find it so interesting. Um, well, a couple things. One thing that I was like, wow, really? Is hearing about the astronauts who like went up in space, and it's like once their bodies started um experiencing no gravity, then the bones began to dissolve, and it really sparks a contemplation within me of how bones are related to gravity and the necessity of gravity and water for bones. And yeah, it's so interesting, like the name of the article, Dim Bones, like the dry bones. Yet the bones health and well-being has so much to do with fluidity and moisture and water and movement, which is also like water. And um and that just really amazes me, and it's something that I never like put together about bones. And I have scoliosis, um and it really like inspires me to try some of these practices in this article. And like another thing that I've always been fascinated with is like sound vibration. And a couple years, many years ago actually, when I got into sound healing, um one of the first like scientific things that I learned about it was that the frequency of these sound healing tools would vibrate the waters within one's body. Um, and that, our body's like, I don't know, like 80% water. I don't know what the ratio is, but we've got a lot of water in our body. So when we're attuning all of our waters to a certain healing frequency, that can be really effective. And then now to be reading how sound is also um you know a very um what's the word I'm looking for? Like accurate, or a very um, conducive therapy of sorts for bones, for bone health. And so, yeah, that's another thing that I feel that I'm contemplating on, is like sound in relationship to water and relationship to bones. Um, and this like interesting thing with gravity, because then like my mind went to like like aquatic acutonic therapy. And um but then I question, like, would that actually be beneficial for the skeletal system, um if the bones need gravity? And it's like interesting with the where it like speaks of like bones like being created in water. But it's so interesting because also, how can, if bones are created in water, like what is the intelligence that is like assessing the gravity that the bones are going to be carrying our body with outside of the water? Like the gravity I felt as a baby in a womb when my bones were created are very different from, that's a very different gravity from like what my body is experiencing now, not being in water, not being in the womb of my mother. So that's, and I also like, I'm not sure, like, what's the difference between what level is the gravity where I'm sitting versus in my mom's womb when I'm growing versus in the ocean versus in outer space. And yeah, so just like something that uh, like crosses my mind, and almost like the intelligence of the body and the development of the body. If there wasn't like a knowing or a feeling of gravity, then like would bones, like if bones dissolve when there's no gravity, like bones need gravity. And so I'm assuming that there's like gravity in water. And but it's also a lot lighter than like the gravity of like what I'm feeling right now. Like I float in water. I'm not like floating right now. And yeah, so it just makes me question like with doing sound therapy for bone health, would it be most effective to have the bones in an environment where it is feeling all the fullness of gravity that it experiences? Um, yeah, very interesting. And like, yeah, also thinking of like the moisture of bones and like, I think about how like 90% of the time I'm pretty dehydrated. I definitely like don't drink enough water. It's been a thing my whole life, like setting the goal of like drinking enough water every day and like different ways to try to get myself there, but ultimately it's something I've never remained consistent at, and I continue to fall back into dehydration. And yeah, and like naturally in my mind, I can see certain body systems that this would impact, and such as my digestive system, where like my poop is like getting all dried up in my colon and like getting stuck, and like I get constipated. Or yeah, that's just like the first one that naturally comes to mind for me. But to but from reading this passage, I have my mind turning of how dehydration is impacting my bones, and if it is impacting my bones, and what difference would staying hydrated make to my bones. And it just gives me all these pointers to like, if I were to go to therapy and seek healing for my spinal deformity, like what are things that could support that process, whatever modality I'm using. And like two things that I'm taking away from this reading is one, like hydration, staying hydrated, and like on a cellular level. And I think that like once you're dehydrated, you can drink like a crap ton of water and like still you're not hydrated on a cellular level. And for those first couple of days you're like peeing a lot, like your body isn't even retaining a lot of what you're drinking, and like at least this is my experience. So it's like how can I really become hydrated on a cellular level and remain there? And I feel like if I am in therapy to have healthier bones, then that is something that could really aid the progression of that therapy. And also using sound. Um, I am feeling really inspired to go see a rolfer and do a 10 series session with a rolfer. And I've been having just like more problems with my back than usual for like the past couple years. And um yeah, and I know that rolfing like really helped with my structure with gravity. And last time I did it, even though I didn't do a full 10 series, so I'm like really wanting to do that. But I feel that also bringing in this intention of being hydrated on a cellular level and immersing myself in some kind of like acutonic or like acoustic therapy um, could be really effective. And I have a set of singing bowls, and this is, um, you know, something that I think about is, if what would happen if I started using my singing bowls more with the intention of helping my bone health. And I'm also like, it also like sparks an inspiration to maybe like do some research on um singing bowls and tuning forks, and what if there's like any science behind what that has done for bone health and bone fluidity. And yeah, very interesting. And then also the practice of like the zzzz. I don't know if I'm doing that right. I think I need to like maybe research what the sound actually is, or like ask you in the next class. But yeah, that was like really interesting to like like feeling into different bones. And yeah, I think of like my whole bone system, the place that like causes me pain is my scoliosis. And so then I also question, like, it's kind of hard to like touch my scoliosis, and or like, set a singing bowl on my back and like play it for myself. And like um so yeah, that's one thing that came up, is like that, like where I want to like focus on my bone health is the most like inaccessible place on my body to be actually touching that area. It's like very hard to like get right there, you know, without like activating other muscles, and that generally aren't when I'm just like being with gravity in my normal posture. Yeah, very interesting. Very grateful for this passage. Um, and yeah, it gives me even more ideas, like with my body systems paper, and like and writing about my bone, my skeletal system being the body system that I'm most disconnected, that I feel like most disconnected from. Having these practices, I would have never like thought like these are practices that could help me get more in tune with my skeletal system. And so yeah, I feel really grateful for that, and I feel really grateful for this class. Um, and all the ways that it has like stimulated my mind to look at my body and my somatic experience um, in a very different way than I did before coming into this class. And yeah, I just hold a lot of appreciation for that.